Welcome to Chasing Man. I'm your host, Liam McAwee. So what is Chasing Man? Simply, it's just man chats. The whole idea of these man chats is just to hear people's journeys through life, the challenges and the adversity that they've faced along the way. The whole idea is so you can grab some of their tools to throw in your toolbox. So if you ever come to the same situation in your own life, you know how to deal with and get through those situations. In today's show, we have a very special guest, a new friend to me, a member of my men's group, Rimon. Awesome conversation with Rimon. We talk a lot about where he is in his life, what help men's groups have done for him, and a lot about when he was a fireman in 9/11, which gets pretty emotional. Enjoy it, guys, and you know the deal. Hit the link, subscribe. Kia ora, Chasing Man. If you don't know what that means, it's just welcome in Maori from New Zealand. 2 days in a row, I have another American guest today. This is a friend of mine, a new friend of mine. We have developed a connection through our men's group, Every Man. Rimon, how are you?
I'm doing, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I'm doing phenomenally well.
Do not be embarrassed with that, mate. Roll with it.
It was tongue in cheek. No, the main thing that I've been struggling with these days, as to my enjoyment, is it's a fucking pandemic out there, man. It's the plague, and here I am. I don't want to say I'm living my best life, but there has been so much open to me and so much accessible to me in the last few weeks, and I dove head in. So I'm really doing well. So thank you.
Dude, tell us a little bit about what it's like down there, because you're down in New York, right?
I am. I am in Westchester County. I'm in Lower Westchester County, which is just outside of the Bronx, which is one of the five boroughs of New York City. I was raised in Queens, so I actually lived in the city proper. But then I moved out here about 5 years ago. And the beginning of the pandemic in New York was in New Rochelle, which is just a little bit down from me. So for us, it was a very dramatic and a very, very rapid escalation, in as much as these things were rapid at that time. And it's been frightening. It's been scary. It's been anxiety ridden. It's been a whole struggle, a whole journey with fear for the first few weeks, until we kind of got a handle on, okay, we can do this. We have enough supplies. We're safe. We're at home for the most part. What kind of complicated for me was the fact that I'm also a volunteer firefighter, and I have been a volunteer firefighter for many years. And one of my major struggles was that I decided that I am not responding during this time because my wife and one of the boys in the house, one of our boys, are immunocompromised. And I was afraid. I was concerned for their well-being. I was concerned for their safety, and I had to weigh that with my obligation and my responsibility and my desire and my need to be out there doing what I signed on to do. And so that was a struggle, and that involved a lot of shame and a lot of struggle for me. But once I got into the whole understanding of it and the whole groove of it, I'm doing great. I'm communicating with people like I've never communicated with before. I'm doing work on myself like never before. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of telling you that I'm doing pretty well. Thank you.
And so how did you get around that mindset change that was required? Because I can imagine it's something that you live for, you love it, you volunteer to do it. So there's obviously massive amounts of passion. But when it comes to family, obviously nothing trumps family, but still there's got to be that internal turmoil that you had to come to terms with.
Yeah, yeah. There was a tremendous amount of internal turmoil, and the shame was overpowering at times, and the shame and the sadness that came from that, and the feeling that I cannot be sitting at home. I need to be out there helping my brethren, my brother firefighters, deal with this ridiculous situation that we've been thrust into. And I sat with it. I just came to a place where, after some much internal struggle, and actually the men's group was very instrumental in that. The ability to express myself, to express my shame, to cry in front of other men, to deal with the emotions, to allow them to wash through me. That was a big part of it, and I came to realize that my place is here. My place is to protect those that I love, to protect my family, and that's where it ends. That's where the buck stops. So it was a journey. It was certainly a struggle, and but again, having you on some of those calls was remarkable, and it was safe space, and it still is safe space. But we all need that. I know I need that in my life to help me figure out the tough choices. So
Now, I was on a men's group call this morning that I've just started up, and after the call, we just sat on the Zoom and just had a bit of chatter. And the guys they're friends of mine. They're younger than me, maybe 5 years, 4 years, 2 years, something around that, younger than me. And they were all in agreement that how important this men's movement is, and the communication and understanding emotion. But they also, all of them brought up how it's missed out in our learning in society, all these great things from a younger age. And it's so hard to draw in these youngsters to understand how important it is. Then we get to this age of mid-30s, late 40s and go, shit, this is really important. How do you think we come around or project these ideas or get younger people, younger men involved in learning more about themselves at a younger age?
that's a great question, and one that I've been struggling with as well. Um, One of the ways, for sure, is through our sons. I have a 29-year-old, and he's in the military, so that adds a layer of complexity. But he also knows me. He also knows that I he's seen my journey, and we're very close. We've been in touch much more closely over the last few weeks, for sure. And I talk to him about it, in as much as possible. I mean, he's very open to hearing from me. He's not as open to the actual expression of emotions on his side, but I think the way we can impact most powerfully is by example, and by communicating uh, our journey to the young people that we have any kind of relationship with. And so another way is, or it's the same way, but it relates a little bit differently. So we have, so my wife and I have three boys. They're her biological kids, but they're at home. Well, two are at the moment because one is sequestered up at school. But talking about emotions, talking about it's okay as a man to express your emotions. If you're sad, you're sad. And if you're angry, chances are that anger is covering up something that you're not sure how to contend with. So it's the communication, it's the lead by example, it's, hey, we're all here, we're all in this together, none of us are perfect, and we have a higher calling. There's something out there that's more than just being this image of Neanderthal man that or I mean, I'm not necessarily, Neanderthal man is not necessarily toxic masculinity, but there's a relevance there. So that's not what we're connected to. That's not where we need to end up. We can do things differently. We can open up our lives. We can be in touch with our feminine side. I love my feminine side, man. I
I'm right there
adore
with
it.
you.
I adore it. And it works. It's the right thing to do. It's the right way to be. It's the right way to communicate. And I know for me, it is advantageous when I'm talking to women, when I'm talking to my partner, my wife for certain, and also with anyone, any woman who understands that the man in front of her has a grasp of communicating with himself, of communing with his own emotions, will be that much more open to talking with me. So it's win-win-win all across the board.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I have noticed recently as well in a couple of our group calls, single men, and they're coming to this idea that they have to understand their emotions more and communicate it, but then they're going out there trying to meet women, and then all these women are thinking that they're weak and that they're soft, and why are you not expressing more macho-ness, right? So it's confusing times for men, especially single men.
Yeah, yeah. Everything. Yeah, everything flipped on its head. The whole dynamic, the whole expectation of how to be a man with a woman is completely different these days. And as far as I'm concerned, way to our advantage and to our benefit, to the benefit of mankind. We're no longer just the hunter gatherers, protectors. Ooh, He-Man. We are also human beings with a full range of emotions and a full set of tools to express those emotions and to better ourselves and to touch deeply into what makes us a man. And woman is a part of that. So,
And it's all part of evolution, right? Like yes, we started with spear and fire and wheel,
yeah,
but now we have heart, we have voice, we have mind, we have consciousness, all these amazing realms to explore, and not to push back into that dark closet anymore.
right. And,
So
and, and, and the complexity of that, of course, is to integrate the two. How do you find the middle way between being the provider, the protector, because I certainly still feel that aspect of it. I feel that very powerfully. As the man of the house, there are certain roles that I still fulfill, and I stand up very powerfully into that role. But I can also be soft, and I can also be gentle, and I can also be tender, and that only increases who I am. That only makes my light shine brighter.
I talked to somebody recently, and they said, the masculine side is the tool apron. I don't know if North Americans call them aprons. The tool belt that carpenters wear.
Yeah,
In
we
New
call it a
Zealand,
tool
we call
belt.
that an apron as well. So you have to be able to wear two aprons, right? And one is a building apron, and one is a cooking apron. And there's
Yeah, man.
nothing wrong with either of those aprons.
No, no. Au contraire, the more you're able to mix and mesh the two, the better off you are. I believe.
For sure. So, talking about all this sort of emotional growth, what was your upbringing like? Was your dad a closed off or open, and what was your relationship like with, I suppose, both of your parents actually?
My dad, my dad was not very warm, not very giving. I think to this day, I'm 59. To this day, he's only told me he loved me one time, I think, and that was within the last year. So emotional expression and emotional support was certainly not one of his strengths, and that is something that I realize how much I lacked and missed. And of course, I didn't realize this until fairly recently. So the benefit of that, of course, and if if I choose to find the gratitude in something, which I usually do.
Talking my words there, talking my words.
Yeah, man. The gratitude for me is that it really clarified and crystallized for me how I want to be with my son.
Yes.
And my son is, again, he's 29. He's taller than I am. He's bigger than I am. I hug him. I kiss him. I tell him I love him. You know what? It serves. It serves. That's the way to do it. So my mom was certainly more nourishing and more motherly and more supportive emotionally. But I think that because of the deficiency from my dad, it overshadowed. So I think I grew up in an emotionally deficient household. I was in a deficiency. Luckily, my grandfather provided that for me. He was very much, he was my hero, my dad's dad, and he was the one who provided a lot of emotional support. So for that, I'm very, very grateful. Um, so I had both. I had both aspects, but I can honestly say that from an early age, I understood that emotions are not as terrible as men say they are, and I've had to learn through that. I had to uh, filter what I saw with toxic masculinity growing up I grew up in a fairly tough neighborhood in Queens, New York, and the fire department when I first joined was not the healthiest environments. So there was quite a bit of rough masculinity pointed my way, or the general atmosphere is what that was. So I had to navigate that. I had to learn how to put up with that, how to deal with that without necessarily falling into that trap. And it wasn't easy. It was not wasn't an easy way, but
What were the strategies that you had in place? Like, how did you deal with that, knowing that that was not serving you?
I expressed, I think, without really having the tools or the knowledge that I have today. I expressed it mostly. I felt the need to express the energy, and I did that through martial arts. I did that through sports, and I did that through firefighting. I think I trained heavily. I did a lot of outwardly pointed, energy focused activity. uh, until I began to associate with different people that opened up the door, opened up a path for me to see differently. It started with martial arts. It transitioned into yoga and meditation and men's work, sitting with other men and learning how to communicate, learning how to tap into what's here and knowing how to express that.
It's often talked about, especially in the business world, that you're the average of the top five people you associate with, right? But it takes a lot of time for us to fully grasp that and realize that, we may have these people in our lives, whether it be work, business, family, that, especially with family, you can love them, but you can also love them from a distance. And sometimes it's a great tool to be able to recognize that, and for you to progress, to just keep that distance, love them unconditionally as we should, but just realize that maybe that they're not serving you to head towards that ultimate goal, that ultimate direction that you want to head towards. And it's not easy, is it? It's not easy at all, but once you get through those steps and you look back, it improves your life. tenfold.
No question. No question. I actually had to take that step. I actually had to take the step of distancing myself from my nuclear family, from my family of origin. It was just not serving me. It was just not the right place for me.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's it. It was certainly not and is not a something easy to navigate, and I feel guilty about it on occasion. But I also know that it's serving me at the moment, and it's this journey of personal growth and expansion is something that I need in my life, and I cannot see it from a different place at the moment. It has to come from here.
And the other thing with that, you already talked about it briefly there before, is you're leading by example, right? So you doing what you've done and moving forward and working on yourself is hopefully going to be recognized by those people for them to actually realize for themselves, wow, if he can do it, I can do it, right?
I would certainly hope so. I would certainly hope to lead by example. I'm perfectly happy to do that.
I was just thinking as you were telling the story about your parents and then your granddad, and I often think that this toxic masculinity or the lack of emotion comes from that generation of baby boomers, right? Going through the war and the depression and struggling times, and they were forced to grow thick skins. They were forced to push forward. And I would have thought that would have been an extension from generation to generation to generation. But then you talk of granddad being so emotionally open. Why do you think he was so emotionally open?
I'm not certain, but what I do know is that he was able to leverage the challenges in his life, and he had a lot of challenges. He left Poland in 1929 because of some serious anti-Semitism, and he came to Israel before it was Israel. Israel was born in 1948, but he was one of the establishers of the country in a sense. So he underwent and experienced a lot of hardship, and he's just one of those people who was able to leverage the challenges and create this incredible beauty. There are some people who are just called to do that. And I'm not sure what the distinction is, and why is it with some people. Some people go bitter and close up and become difficult to deal with, yet others are take these tremendous challenges and are able to flourish and turn it into something beautiful. I don't know. I don't know the answer. But
Yeah, it's
lucky
interesting.
for me that worked. That happened with
Yeah,
him.
it's interesting, right? Because, whenever you have adversity in life through family members, you usually choose, and you've already used that terminology, which I love, you either choose to, find the gratitude out of that wrongness and push forward to improve your life. So one would say, like the growth mindset, or just totally fall into that victimhood where you become so fixed that, you're born to follow the path that you received from your parents. And it's funny because you're right. I don't understand how or why, because you meet a lot of people in life that you think are strong and of a growth mindset, but they just can't push through some of those challenges in life. Hey, I wanted to touch a little bit more on your firefighting. So
Sure.
I haven't asked you this personally. Were you involved with 9/11?
Yeah, yeah. I was down at the towers. It wasn't on the first day. It was on the third day. I at the time was actually working in Midtown. My shop was in Midtown Manhattan on Fifth Avenue, right off of 37th Street. And that Tuesday morning, my routine is I usually get into the city about 7:30. I went down to the corner on Fifth Avenue to get a cup of coffee at Au Pain.
Say that again?
I go down to the corner of Fifth Avenue to get a cup of coffee at Au Pain, which
Oh,
is
no, I was joking. I heard you say coffee, and I loved it.
coffee.
I loved it. I just wanted to hear you say coffee again.
Yeah, well, some things are sometimes permanent.
Don't change it, buddy. Sorry to interrupt you. Carry on.
No worries, no worries. And yeah, so I actually watched the progression of the towers falling, but I was in the city, and my gear was at home in Long Island. At the time, I was living in New Hyde Park, and I was with the New Hyde Park Fire Department. That day, I somehow made it home. I don't even remember how. The next day, I was a little bit more worried about the office, but that Thursday, I took my gear and I drove into the city, and then I worked on the pile with some of the rescue and recovery efforts. So I was down there for a bit.
Are you right to talk about that a little more, or?
Yeah. It's a challenging topic for me, but yeah, yes, we can explore that. Sure.
Yeah, man. How just I guess this is like the man's group stuff. Like from an emotional standpoint, what was that like?
Uh,
Because being, especially from New Zealand, like I remember the day. I remember waking up. I remember turning on the TV. And from New Zealand, it doesn't feel real. It's on a screen. It's in America. That's a big country. That like it felt very alien. But for you to actually be there and be present and have the energy of everything going around you, like I can't imagine.
I think it was overwhelming to an extent that I mostly blocked it out. I mostly created this thick wall to enable me to continue, because the enormity of it was just so great that I probably would have ceased functioning had I allowed it to impact me as much as it could potentially have. I really had to compartmentalize it and do what I needed to do. I think the actual effects of it, the actual trauma of it, did not kick in until significantly later. And I have not been down to the site in years. I haven't been to the museum. I find it challenging. I find it it's still very, very tender and very raw. And I did address it a little bit as far as doing some emotional release around it, but it's still there, and it's still a sensitive topic. So I think I'm still blocking it out to an extent. And I really was not down there very much. I mean, compared to some of the guys who lived and breathed it day in and day out. I know many guys who were there day in and day out, from NYPD and FDNY and other branches. So it was. I think it was something that I'm still dealing with.
It's funny. My brother and I talked about this the other day, and what is mental health, and the questioning around anxiety and depression, because from a technical standpoint, they were manufactured emotions from the pharmaceutical companies, right? But then we also got onto the topic of PTSD. I don't like to call it a disorder, but post-traumatic stress. And it's easy for someone who works in mental health to say, it's easy to, you create different patterns and you work to a positive mindset and all that sort of stuff. But I touch wood, I will never understand what it's like to be at war and see someone killed in front of me, or pick up the remains and the remnants and clean up after such a horrible, horrible, horrible situation. Do you think that you have or have had those elements of post-traumatic stress? Would you like? I know you're probably a man that doesn't classify things, but is that the like if you were to give it a title, would that sort of sum it up?
I think there's a certain element of that for certain. I think there's no question that there are some elements of PTSD uh, within the experience for me. And I also think that one of the ways that first responders deal with life in general, it's kind of a perspective. You really do have to distance yourself from what's happening in front of you, whether it be picking up body parts or going into a dark, smoky, hot room or whatever it is. There has to be a certain element of distancing from your reality. You create this bubble kind of a thing that protects my psyche from what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's not even that dramatic. People who I think first responders today, people in the medical front lines, are really actively engaging in that. Otherwise, you can't survive. I mean, we as human beings can probably not survive that kind of a maelstrom of fears and emotions and images and visuals and memories, and it just hits boom 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 boom. It's something that's not meant for us as human beings. I don't think so. So
Yeah, and
there's
it's got to be. It's so fascinating because it's got to be challenging. It's got to be hard on you emotionally and physically, obviously. But you guys that do it love it. You love it. Like you live for it. And but you have to block it out. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
was this, do you think there is a link on your journey for self-development that has come through what you do, or do you think this is just a natural progression for where you are in your life with your age and the age of your kids and stuff? Or do you think a lot of the work that you've done over your life has made you address it a little bit deeper?
I hadn't thought of that question, but that's a very astute question.
I like the response.
Naturally, you would. Um, I'm certain that it has it absolutely has an influence. I mean, we are the sum of our parts, or I am the sum of my parts anyway. But I'm certain that the experience and the demands I made on myself, and the product that evolved from it, certainly has to do with where I am today. There's no question that there are elements of the challenges that I faced because of the fire service, because of the first response. So yeah, I think so. If you ask me how, I don't know yet, but something
Is
to look.
is there a lot of that sort of stuff in place for you guys, you first responders? Like, is there a lot of work on, I guess, the mental health side of things or the self-development, or are you just sort of led to fend for yourself?
I think of late it's more of a thing. There are more services available for first responders, but that's fairly recent. One of the things that's been offered is yoga for first responders.
Really?
Oh yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's phenomenal. It's when I think about how my body has changed since I started actively practicing yoga, and how my communication with my body has improved and increased, it's just mind-boggling. And I'm so grateful, I'm so pleased to see that there are people who are actually offering these services to first responders. I know that the police departments do it. I know the fire departments do it. And so there are definitely elements in place, and there are increasing, but I don't think it's as much a part of the rigor of education as that we should have. That should be an integral element of any academy that you go through, of any training that you go through, of any continuing training that you go through, because of the impact on our body and our emotions and everything that we bring with us. All the tools that we have accessible on the site, on the scene, are what we bring to them. So if we're better, we can offer that much more to those that we're responding to. So I'm a tremendous proponent of this continuing and growing.
It's I think of really random weird things, right? So I was thinking of t-shirt ideas yesterday, and this is nothing against education, knowledge, anything like that. But we used to have a saying when we were in college and university that C's get the degrees, right? Because it didn't matter if you didn't put in the maximum effort, you still got the degree at the end of the day. So I was thinking a t-shirt, C's get the degrees, but it takes a lifetime to make the A team. Because we have all these life skills that are just, for me, I'm not a bright guy, but my life skills for me personally have trumped my education skills a long time ago. And all these things that we've been talking about, self-development, meditation, yoga, working through limiting beliefs and things like that, it would be really, really great if we could offer it up from, like I said, at such a younger age. And the thing that I suggested on Everyman the other week, I don't know if you were there, was, to discover a way that we could make emotions and men's group sexy again. Not sexy as in pulling another partner, but just so younger men go, oh my God, that's so freaking cool that they can do that. And I fully believe it's possible.
Hey, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree.
You'll disagree?
And I think you're selling. I do not disagree with what you're saying. And I think you're selling yourself short by thinking you're not bright. I don't think that's true.
That's something I'm working on. We're all working on something, and that's one of my list of many. Hey, I really appreciate you jumping on board today, but I always ask my guests to share some piece of advice for the men, maybe to the women listeners out there, something that has really helped you out in all your challenges in life and overcoming adversity. Just one major tool that you have found that works really, really well for you just to keep pushing forward. And it can be two. If you need two, I'll give you two. Danny yesterday says
I think it's fairly clear to me at the moment that what is calling me most and what has been calling me most lately is the desire and the work around being authentic. How do I discover what my authentic desire is at the moment? What is it that I want in this moment, not to appease whoever I'm communicating with? What are my deep desires? And for me, that's been a struggle. For me, that's been because I have always been one who helps others. I've always been one who puts others before my needs, and it became unconscious after a period of time, to the point where I was walking around with anger, with resentment of others because I was doing for them and not for me. But it was my fucking struggle. I was the one who didn't know what the hell I was doing. So the relationship, the conversation with myself about my authenticity and what is it that makes me within my power, gives me the position, the status, the place to be in my power so that I can express myself most fully. And I'm not sure that's a tool, but I know that has been my quest lately, and that I think is what has moved me fairly dramatically over the last several months.
That's powerful, dude, because like, you know, I shy away from just solely talking about masculinity, but this is a very masculine trait. You know, you've said it, I think twice, 3 times already, that you're a provider, and we'll never get rid of that. And part of providing is for others. So we just continually try and, you know, fill other people's cups and help people and fix people and do things that when we finally look in the mirror, we're looking at a cup that's half empty, a quarter empty. And the old saying is, how can you give to others if your cup is not 100% full, right?
That's right. You got to take the oxygen mask for yourself first.
There you go. There we go. I love that. Mate, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you on, I think it's this evening's call for Everyman. Big shout out to Everyman, Dan Dotty and the boys there. I'm going to plug those guys. Like, if you're interested,
absolutely.
If you guys are really interested in looking at men's groups, we highly recommend Everyman. We're involved with Everyman. It is evolving as we speak with this whole pandemic, but they're doing some really cool free calls at the moment. Hopefully, they're still doing those when this podcast comes out. But I suppose let's finish on that question. How did you find Everyman?
My wife. She's like, I heard of this organization. You should check it out. Like, oh gosh, really? Okay. That's kind of how I find out about it. And it drew me in. It drew me in right away. I like the format, and I especially like what they're doing currently with the platform, and I can't wait for the membership platform for it to be a little more robust than what it is currently. But these calls are tremendous.
Yeah, and I love the fact that if you want it daily, it's there.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, like I love weekly, but there are some days where I just need it.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact, like I explained it to the group that I was with this morning. It's I'm not looking for you to solve anything. I'm not going to solve anything for you. It's almost like a dumping ground that you can discover answers for yourself, because we usually have the answers.
Absolutely.
It's just discovering them sometimes for ourselves that is tricky.
Absolutely. I think the one of the things that is important about these types of organizations and well, this one specifically, is that they help me discover tools. And I have the skills, I don't always have the tools. So it's a combination of the two that helps us forward our path.
Here we go. Awesome to have you on board, brother. I love you like a brother from another mother. And we'll catch up with you this evening.
Beautiful.
Champion, buddy.